A top student, a daughter of an imam, a graduation stage filled with honor, and in a single moment, everything collapsed when she claimed she was told three secrets every believer must know. What you are about to hear is not a normal story. It is a deeply emotional and controversial testimony of a young woman who rose to the highest level of academic excellence in one of the most respected Islamic institutions in Egypt. From the outside, her future looked secure, her identity clearly defined, and her path fully approved by her family and community. But sometimes, the moments that look like the peak of success become the very place where everything changes. On the day of her graduation, something happened that no one expected. Standing before scholars, dignitaries, and her proud father, she revealed what left everyone looking for an answer. Stay till the end because this story will take you through her journey step by step, from that defining moment on the stage to the reaction of her family, the decision that led her into a hospital, and the unexpected event that will be going through unfold as you listened. Now here is her story. I still remember the day my life changed, and even now it feels like I am telling someone else's story. If you stay with me till the end, you will understand why I had to leave everything I knew behind. I was not searching for anything new. I was not confused about my faith. I was the daughter of an imam, raised carefully, taught strictly, and known for my discipline and knowledge. From a young age, people said I was different. I loved to read, to study, and to understand deeply. My father was proud of me, not in a loud way, but in the quiet way he would mention my name among his friends. When I was accepted into one of the most respected Islamic universities in Egypt, it felt like the path of my life was already written. At school, I worked harder than most. I wanted to honor my family and prove that I deserved my place. By the time I reached my final year, I had become one of the best students in the institution. My teachers trusted me. My classmates respected me, and when it was time for graduation, I was chosen to stand before everyone and speak. The day of my graduation came with a kind of joy I had never felt before. The entire campus was filled with people. Families had traveled from far places, dignitaries were seated in special sections, and the leaders of the institution were all present. I could see my father sitting among them, dressed in his finest clothes, calm and dignified. That alone made my heart full because I knew how much this moment meant to him. As I prepared for my speech, I held my notes tightly in my hands. I had practiced those words many times. They were words about discipline, faith, knowledge, and service. Everything I planned to say reflected the life I had lived and the beliefs I had been taught since I was a child. There was no confusion in my mind, no doubt, no fear. I was simply ready to speak and make my father proud. When my name was called, the applause felt loud but distant at the same time. I walked slowly to the stage, trying to remain calm. As I stood before the microphone, I looked out at the crowd. My teachers were watching closely. Important guests sat with serious expressions. My fellow students were smiling. For a brief moment, everything felt normal, exactly as it should be. I began to speak, reading from what I had written. My voice was steady, and the audience listened quietly. But as I continued, something started to feel different. It was not something I could explain at first. It felt like the air around me had changed, like the entire space had become still in a way I had never experienced before. Then, without warning, a light appeared. It was not like the sunlight or any artificial light I had ever seen. It was brighter, but it did not hurt my eyes. It seemed to cover the entire place, not just the stage. I could sense it all around me, and at that moment I could no longer focus on the words I had prepared. My heart began to beat faster, not out of fear, but because something deeper was happening. In that moment I became aware of a presence. It was not something I could see clearly, but I knew it was there. I felt it strongly, and it brought a kind of peace that I had never known before. Then, in a way I cannot fully describe, I understood a message being given to me. It was as if someone was revealing truth directly into my heart. I realized that Jesus is the one and that no one comes to the Father except through him. I did not plan to say this. I did not even think about it before that moment. Before I could stop myself, I found myself speaking words that were not part of my speech. I heard my own voice say what had been revealed to me. As the words left my mouth, the entire atmosphere changed again, but this time it was not peaceful, it was heavy. The silence that followed was not calm, it was filled with shock. I looked at the faces in the crowd, and what I saw made my heart sink. My teachers looked confused. Some of the dignitaries were already whispering among themselves. My fellow students stared at me as if they did not recognize me anymore, and then I saw my father. The expression on his face was something I had never seen before. It was not just disappointment. It was something deeper, something that made me realize that my life would never be the same again. I stood there, unable to continue, unable to explain what had just happened. The light I had seen was gone, but the message remained in my heart, clear and strong. I knew what I had experienced was real, but at that moment, I also knew that no one else around me understood it the way I did. The silence did not last long. What followed was a wave of confusion that spread across the entire gathering. Some people began to speak in low tones, while others raised their voices in concern. I could see movement among the officials seated in front. A few of them stood up, signaling to the organizers. It was clear that something had gone very wrong in their eyes. I tried to gather myself and continue my speech, but the words I had prepared no longer made sense to me. My hands were shaking slightly, and my mind was not where it had been before I stepped onto the stage. I could feel the weight of every eye on me, and it became harder to stand. My body felt weak, not because I was sick, but because I was overwhelmed by everything happening at once. Within moments, 2 staff members approached me quietly but firmly. They asked me to step away from the microphone. Their tone was controlled, but I could sense urgency in it. I nodded without resisting. As I turned away from the crowd, I heard a mixture of reactions behind me. Some people sounded angry, others sounded confused. A few called my name, but not in a comforting way. As I walked down from the stage, I looked once more toward where my father was seated. He was no longer sitting. He stood still, his face serious and hard. He did not move toward me. He did not speak. That silence from him affected me more than the noise from the crowd. It told me that something had broken between us in that moment. I was led away from the main hall into a smaller room. The atmosphere there was tense. A few of my lecturers were already inside, speaking among themselves. When they saw me, they stopped talking. One of them asked me what had happened, but I could not give the kind of answer they wanted. I tried to explain that I had experienced something real, that I had not planned to say those words. But the more I spoke, the more concerned they looked. Not long after, my father entered the room. His presence changed everything. The room became completely quiet. He did not greet me the way he usually would. He did not ask how I was feeling. Instead, he looked at me with deep concern and something close to fear. He asked me a few direct questions, but I could tell he was not listening for understanding. He was searching for something else, something that would explain my behavior in a way he could accept. When I told him again that what happened was real, that I had received a message I could not ignore, his expression became even more troubled. He turned to the others in the room and spoke in a low but firm voice. I could not hear every word, but I understood the decision he was making. In his mind, something was wrong with me, something that needed to be examined and corrected. Within a short time, arrangements were made. I was not allowed to return to the ceremony. I was not allowed to speak to my friends. Everything moved quickly, as if they were trying to contain a situation that could spread. I felt like I was no longer being treated as a student or even as a daughter, but as a problem that needed to be solved. As I was escorted out of the building, I felt a deep mix of emotions. I was confused by how quickly everything had changed. I was hurt by the distance I saw in my father's eyes. But at the same time, deep inside me, there was a quiet certainty that what I experienced on that stage was true. Even though everything around me was falling apart, that truth did not leave me. I was taken from the university that same day without any chance to return to my room or speak to anyone I knew. The journey away from the campus felt longer than it really was. I sat in the back seat of the car beside a woman assigned to watch me, while my father sat in front, silent the entire time. No one explained anything to me clearly, but I already understood what was happening. As we moved through the streets, I kept thinking about the moment on the stage. I replayed it again and again in my mind, asking myself questions I could not answer. I was not afraid of what I had experienced. What troubled me was how everyone else had responded to it. I knew what I felt was real, but I could also see that no one around me believed that. When we arrived at the hospital, everything became more serious. It was not a place I had ever imagined myself entering in that way. The building was quiet, and the staff moved with a kind of routine that made me feel like this was normal for them. For me, it was not normal at all. I was asked to sit, to wait, to answer questions, but none of the questions touched the truth of what had happened to me. My father spoke to the doctors privately at first. I could see them through a glass window, their faces serious as they discussed me. At that moment, I felt something I had never felt before. It was the feeling of being talked about as if I was not present, as if my own voice did not matter anymore. When he finally came back to where I was seated, he looked at me in a way that made it clear he had made up his mind. He told me that I would stay there for observation. His words were calm, but they carried a decision that I could not change. I tried to explain again that nothing was wrong with me, that I was thinking clearly, that I understood everything I was saying. But the more I spoke, the more it seemed to confirm his fears instead of calming them. I was then taken to a room that would become my space for some time. It was simple, clean, and quiet, but it did not feel like a place of rest. It felt like a place where I had been placed apart from the world I knew. As the door closed behind me, I realized fully that I was now alone in a situation I did not choose. That night, lying on the bed, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. I thought about my father, my school, and everything I had worked for. All of it felt distant now. But even in that quiet room, with no one to agree with me or support me, the truth I had received did not fade. It remained steady inside me, even as everything else around me seemed uncertain. The first days in the hospital felt slow and heavy. Time moved in a way I had never experienced before. There were routines for everything: when to wake up, when to eat, when to speak with the doctors. I followed all of it quietly, not because I agreed with why I was there, but because I had no choice. The nurses were polite but distant. To them, I was just another patient to observe. Each day, different doctors came to speak with me. They asked many questions about my thoughts, my past, and especially about what happened on the stage. I answered them honestly. I told them I was aware of everything I said. I explained that I did not lose control of myself. I tried to make them understand that what I experienced was not confusion, but clarity. Still, I could see in their faces that they were trying to fit my words into something they already believed. There were moments when I questioned myself, not because I doubted what I experienced, but because of how everyone else reacted to it. When you're surrounded by people who all say something is wrong with you, it begins to press on your mind. But each time I went back to that moment in my heart, I felt the same calm assurance. It did not feel like something imagined. It felt steady and real. At night, when everything became quiet, I had time to think deeply. I would sit on the bed and remember my life before that day. I thought about my father's teachings, my studies, and the future I had planned. Everything had been clear before. Now, everything looked different. But even in that change, I sensed that I was not alone, even though there was no one physically beside me. Sometimes I would notice other patients in the hallway. Some spoke loudly, some kept to themselves, and others seemed completely withdrawn. Seeing them made me understand why my father made the decision he did. From his point of view, he believed he was protecting me. That realization did not remove the pain, but it helped me understand his actions in a different way. One afternoon, after another round of questioning, I sat quietly by the window in my room. The sunlight came in softly, and for a moment everything felt still again, similar to that brief stillness I felt on the stage, though not as strong. In that quiet moment, I felt a gentle reminder in my heart of what had been revealed to me. It was not loud or overwhelming, but it was clear enough to steady me again. I began to realize that my situation was not only about being misunderstood, it was also about what I would do with the truth I had received. I did not know how long I would remain in that place. I did not know what would happen when I left, but I knew that what I had encountered was not something I could deny, even if no one around me accepted it. It was on a quiet afternoon that something new began to happen. I had just finished speaking with one of the doctors, and I returned to my room feeling tired but calm. A few minutes later, there was a soft knock on the door. When it opened, I saw a man I had not seen before. He was dressed like the other medical staff, but there was something different in the way he looked at me. He introduced himself as one of the doctors working with a visiting medical team. His voice was gentle, and he did not rush his words. Unlike the others, he did not begin by asking many questions. Instead, he asked me how I was truly feeling. That question sounded simple, but it felt different from the way others had asked. It felt like he actually wanted to hear my answer, not just record it. I told him I was well, that I understood everything happening around me, even if I did not agree with it. He listened without interrupting. Then he asked me in a careful way about what happened on the day of my graduation. I hesitated at first because I had already told the story many times without being understood. But something about his calm presence made it easier for me to speak again. As I shared my experience, he did not react with shock or doubt. He remained steady, listening closely. When I finished, he stayed quiet for a moment, as if thinking deeply about what I had said. Then he spoke in a low voice and told me that there are things in this world that cannot always be explained by medical knowledge alone. He let me know that he had heard stories from different places, stories of people who had encounters they could not deny. That was the first time since I entered the hospital that someone did not try to correct me or question my sanity. Instead, he acknowledged what I had experienced without dismissing it. That alone brought a sense of relief I had not felt since the day of my graduation. It was not loud or emotional, but it was real. Over the next few days, he visited me again, always at quiet times. Our conversations were careful and private. He did not speak openly in front of others, but when we were alone, he shared more. He told me that he worked with a group connected to foreign missionaries who quietly helped people in difficult situations. He did not pressure me or rush me, but he helped me see that I was not completely without support. In those moments, I began to understand that my situation might not end within the walls of that hospital. There was a possibility I had not considered before. It was not yet clear, and it was not something we could speak about openly, but the idea alone gave me a new kind of hope. For the first time since everything happened, I began to believe that there could be a way forward. After those first conversations, the doctor became more careful with how and when he spoke to me. He never stayed too long, and he never visited at the same time each day. At first, I did not understand why, but later I realized he was being cautious so no one would suspect anything. In a place like that, even a small change in routine could raise questions. One evening, he came in and sat quietly for a moment before speaking. He told me that if I truly believed what I had experienced, then I needed to be prepared for what it might cost me. He did not try to make the situation sound easy. Instead, he helped me see it clearly. He let me know that there were others who had gone through similar situations and had to leave everything behind to live freely. Hearing that made my heart heavy, but it also helped me understand the seriousness of my situation. We began to speak in a more careful way after that. Sometimes we did not say things directly. We used simple words and short sentences, making sure that if anyone overheard, they would not understand the deeper meaning. He started to ask me small questions about my readiness, about whether I trusted what I had received enough to follow it beyond what was familiar to me. At night, I thought deeply about everything he said. I thought about my father, my home, and the life I had known for many years. Leaving all of that behind was not something I had ever imagined. It was not just about going to a different place. It meant stepping into a life that was completely unknown to me. That thought brought both fear and quiet strength at the same time. One day, he explained that there might be a way for me to leave the hospital without drawing attention. It would require patience and careful timing. He told me that the people he worked with had helped others before, but every situation was different. He did not promise anything quickly. He only said that if everything went well, I would have a chance to go somewhere safe. As he spoke, I listened closely, trying to understand each step without asking too many questions. The plan was not detailed all at once. It came in small parts over several days. Each time he visited, he added a little more. I began to see how everything could come together, but I also understood that it would only work if we remained careful. In the middle of all this, I kept holding on to the truth that had been revealed to me. That truth became the reason I was willing to consider such a step. Without it, I would have chosen to remain where I was, even if I was misunderstood. But now, I knew that staying would mean hiding something I could not deny. And slowly, I began to prepare my heart for what was coming next. The night everything changed again did not feel special at first. It was quiet, like many other nights in the hospital. The hallway lights were dim, and most of the staff had settled into their routines. I sat on my bed trying to remain calm, even though I knew this might be the night the doctor had been preparing me for. Earlier that day, he had come in briefly and spoke in a very careful way. He let me know that things were in place and that I needed to be ready. He did not give many details at that moment, but his tone was different. It carried a sense of urgency that I had not heard before. When he left, I understood that I had to stay alert and follow exactly what I had been told. Late into the night, I heard a soft sound at my door. It opened slowly and the doctor stepped in. He did not turn on the main light, he only used a small light to see clearly. He told me quietly that it was time to move. My heart began to beat faster, not out of panic, but because I knew I was about to leave everything familiar behind. I stood up and followed him without speaking. I carried nothing with me except the clothes I was wearing. He had told me earlier that it was better to leave without drawing attention. As we stepped into the hallway, everything felt louder than usual, even our footsteps. But the place remained still and no one stopped us. We moved carefully through a series of corridors I had not seen before. At one point, we paused as a nurse passed by in the distance. We remained still until she was gone, then continued. Each step felt important. I did not ask questions. I trusted him because I knew he understood the risk better than I did. Eventually, we reached a back exit. Another person was waiting there, someone I did not recognize. They spoke briefly in low voices, then motioned for me to follow. Outside, the air felt different. It was the first time in many days that I stood under the open sky. For a moment, I looked around, taking in the quiet darkness, knowing I might not see this place again. I was led into a vehicle and we drove away without turning on the interior light. No one spoke for a while. I sat quietly, trying to process what was happening. I had left the hospital, but I did not know exactly where I was going. Still, deep inside me, there was a steady sense that I was being guided forward, even though the path ahead was unknown. As the distance between me and the hospital grew, I realized that my life had changed again, just as it had on the graduation stage. But this time, I was not standing before a crowd. I was moving quietly into a new chapter, one step at a time, without knowing what the next day would bring. We drove for a long time that night. I could not tell exactly where we were going because the roads were unfamiliar and it was still dark outside. No one explained much to me, but I sensed that everything was being done carefully. At some point, we stopped at a quiet house. It did not look like anything special from the outside, but for me, it became a place of safety. Inside, I was welcomed in a simple way. There were a few people there, calm and kind, but also careful in how they spoke. I was given a place to sit and some water. No one asked too many questions that night. They seemed to understand that I needed time to rest after everything that had happened. For the first time since I left the hospital, I allowed myself to breathe without feeling watched. The next few days were different from anything I had known before. I stayed indoors most of the time while arrangements were being made. The doctor who helped me visited once to make sure I was safe, but he did not stay long. I understood that it was risky for him to be seen too often. Before he left, he told me that I would be moved again to a place where I could live more freely. During that time, I began to learn quietly from those around me. They did not force anything on me. They simply shared with me in a calm and patient way. They helped me understand more about what had been revealed to me, step by step. I asked many questions, and for the first time I felt like I could speak openly without fear of being judged or silenced. Still, my thoughts often returned to my father. I wondered how he was, what he had been told, and whether he believed I had truly lost my mind. That part of my heart was not easy to carry. I had not left because I stopped loving him. I left because I could not deny what I knew to be true. That difference was something I held quietly inside me. After some time, I was moved again, just as they had said. This time it was to a place farther away, where I would not easily be found. The journey was done with the same care as before. When I arrived, I realized that this would be where I would begin again, not as the person I used to be, but as someone stepping into a new understanding of life and faith. Now, as I share this, I am in that place. I am safe, and I am learning each day. My life is not what it used to be, but I have found a kind of peace that I cannot explain in simple words. The path has not been easy, but it has been clear in a way I did not expect. As I share my story now, I do so with a quiet heart. Not everything has been easy, and not everything is fully settled in my life. There are still days when I think about my past, my family, and the life I once lived. But through all of it, I have come to understand that faith is not only about what is comfortable. Sometimes it asks you to stand firm even when you are alone. I have also come to see that there are many people around the world who have had encounters they cannot openly speak about. Some live in places where they do not have the freedom to follow what they believe without fear. If you are listening to this, I want you to remember such people in your prayers. Think of those who are trying to live quietly with what they have received, hoping for strength each day. If you are someone who already believes, take your walk with God seriously. Give time to prayer, study His Word with patience. Live in a way that shows kindness to others, even those who do not agree with you. Faith is not only what you say, but also how you live when no one is watching. The way you treat others matters more than you may realize. Do not allow distractions to take you away from what truly matters. There will always be pressure from different sides, sometimes from people close to you, but learn to stand with wisdom and humility. You do not need to fight everyone. Sometimes quiet strength speaks louder than many words, and if you are someone who is unsure, someone who is still searching, take your time to understand deeply. Do not rush, but do not ignore what you feel in your heart. Be honest in your search and be open to learning. Truth does not need to be forced, but it should not be avoided either. As for me, I continue to grow step by step. I am still learning, still praying, and still holding on to what was revealed to me. My journey is not finished, but I have chosen to walk it with faith. And I hope that wherever you are, you will also seek truth, live with love, and remain steady in your walk with God.